Hello, everybody. Welcome. I am so glad that you are here. I want to welcome you to this presentation, and I would love for you all to go into the chat and tell me, where are you calling in from? Where are you in the world? Are you here in the United States? Are you somewhere else in the world? Tell me where you're from. Tell me what brought you here. Are you a teacher? Are you a parent? Are you in education? Are you doing something in education? What actually do you do, and what has brought you to this particular presentation? So I'm going to open up my chat and see who's here. Yay, Columbus, Ohio. Hi, Brittany. So glad you're here. Early childhood education. Redwood City, California. Texas. Child Care Center, Boston. Excellent. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, everybody just click on chat. Tell me where you're from. Tell me what you do and why you're here. What's your passion? What's making you interested in this topic? I would love to know that too. Just see if there's anybody else waiting. In our waiting room. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, we are going to get started here, and I want to tell you that if you are here, it's because you're somebody who really cares about kids. You really care about parents and teachers, and you want to make a difference, right? The title of our talk tonight is "It's Too Late to Agree with Me, I've Changed My Mind." I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how I changed my mind, but I'm sure some of you have gone through some changes and some thoughts and some paradigm shifts as well. And we're going to talk about how can we get other people excited and on board and understanding why it's so important to not only change our mind, but to change our practices and change the way that we are serving kids and teachers and people who like kids and teachers and in our schools and in our communities as well. Yay, we've got parents. We've got parents of kids with trauma from Canada, from Marysville, Kentucky. Welcome, Angela, Linda, school secretary. Yay, for school secretaries. You guys are the backbone of our schools. Head Start teacher. Excellent, excellent. I love this. Well, as we go through the presentation, I am going to keep you on mute for now. At the end, if we have some extra time, I will unmute you and let you ask some questions depending on how much time we have. I am going to record this and send it out to everybody who signed up. So if for some reason you need to leave early, that's fine, but we would love for you to stay to the end because I have some announcements about some opportunities for you to learn about. So thank you so much for being here, and thanks for letting us know where you're from. So this title, "It's Too Late to Agree with Me, I've Changed My Mind." I love this quote. I think I saw it the first time on a classroom wall. And I think it really sums up the idea of change. Change is not always a bad thing, right? Going through change can be difficult. It can be challenging. Of course, we've all gone through a lot of change this past year, right? But the ability to adapt and change our minds is an essential part of growth and being in this world that's constantly changing, right? Because if we don't change, then nothing changes, right? There are a lot of things in our world, especially with the way we've been parenting and teaching kids, that aren't helping. They're not working anymore. Our kids are struggling, and we have kids dropping out. We have kids who are so anxious and so stressed out, and kids that come to us with trauma who need us to change. They really need us to change the way we're doing things to make things better. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So I started off with the Elvis song, "A Little Less Conversation, a Little More Action." This workshop is going to talk about action. How can we put these practices in action, and what can you do? I'm hoping to inspire you to actually go out and take some action this week or next week. Maybe it's almost the weekend, but next week in your school or with your family or in your community, use this information. We're going to brainstorm some ideas that you can use right away to go out and make an impact. So I want to welcome you again and let you know that you are in the right place. If you are a parent or teacher, or you may have some other role. We have a school secretary, we have some Head Start folks here. Fantastic. All of you are part of our community, okay? If you are a change agent, that means that you are already 100% on board with compassionate, non-punitive, brain-based parenting and teaching, and you are ready to help shift the cultural paradigm in families and schools. You want to make a change, right? You may be somebody who's just a little curious when you saw this idea of change and paradigm shifting, and you thought, I don't really know a lot about that, but I'm interested. I want to know more. I have an open mind and I'm open to change. So some of you may be in that category. You may be here because you want to learn about using compassionate, non-punitive, brain-based parenting and teaching, and you are here because you are open and you're ready to learn. So those, you might be one or the other. So in the chat right now, I want you to type, are you here because you are a change agent? Type change agent. Or are you here because you are open to change? And type open. Change agent or open to change, one of those two. And I'm just curious to see, who do we have? Who's open and who's kind of new to this, or maybe you're just curious, you just want to learn more. You see in my chat. Stop sharing for a minute so I can see it more clearly. Yay, yay, lots of change agents. Open foster parent, open to change, excited to learn how to help deal with trauma, parent and an educator. Lots of you are both. Excellent. Open, doing some conscious discipline, so it's perfect. Yeah, there are a lot of different programs out there that people are now becoming more and more open to using, I think. And I think especially because of this pandemic, people are desperate for this information. You know, schools and families are all really looking for, how can we reach these kids who are so anxious and so just overwhelmed by trauma? What can we do to help them? And we have some answers for them. Some of us who are already change agents, we know what to do and we're doing it, but we just need to get more people on board so that we're not the only ones, right? All right, great. Thank you for sharing that. So let me tell you who I am and why I'm here. I was a teacher in the classroom for, I counted them up finally. I always said over 20 years, but I actually counted all my years of teaching in classrooms as a full-time teacher, and I worked for 27 years. Oh, that's a long time. So I've seen it all. I worked in public, private schools. I worked overseas for a while, all grade levels, Most of my work was in high school and middle school, but my final position was in an elementary school. And I worked with those little kindergartens, little munchkins. I told them I felt like I was Dorothy in Munchkinland. So I've seen a lot of different changes over the years. And I've always been a person open to change. I think we need to do that. We just need to jump on and not get stuck in the mud in the old ways, because that's the way we've always done it, right? I'm the founder of Heartstrong International. I've been doing this for 7 years, working with parents and educators who are making changes and helping to support growth and healing in children with trauma, anxiety, and ACEs. And I'm on a mission to change this paradigm of what we're doing, how we're supporting children. More and more people are finally catching this wave and understanding that that old paradigm of punishing and rewarding and trying to motivate children to behave just is not working anymore. And so as I've become older and wiser, I like to say I'm now bolder and wiser, not just older, but bolder. I've changed my mind a lot, but now I'm really feeling like this is a time when I have the ability to speak up and speak out and speak for children, because if we don't speak for the children, who else is going to do that, right? We need to do that. And I know so many of you that are here feel exactly the same way, and you are doing this, and I'm so glad that you're here tonight. So we're going to try to change other people's minds to get them on board and make it a movement, a change agent movement, where we're going in and we're just really supporting people. We're not clobbering them with this, but we're offering this as a way that they can help support that growth and healing in our kids. So here's a little throwback Thursday for you. This is me and my son, Hero. Hero was adopted at age 10. And when I first adopted him, I had already been a teacher for many, many years. So I thought, oh, I can do this. I know how to do discipline. I know what to do if he's misbehaving. I know, I have it all figured out. I'd been to the love and logic trainings. I was good. I'd already used positive discipline in my classroom for years and years. So I felt pretty confident in my abilities to be an adoptive parent. I found out rather quickly that all the things I had been doing were not working with this child. He came to me with severe trauma, developmental trauma. He had grown up in a situation that was very, very traumatic. And he also came to me, he's deaf. We use sign language in our home, but wasn't able to communicate. So it was really hard for him to get his needs met in appropriate ways. And he would act out in behaviors to try to get his needs met. And it was pretty dangerous and pretty scary at times. And some of you know my story, so I won't go into all the details, but I realized that all of that positive discipline and love and logic, all those things that I learned as a teacher just weren't working. And so I mentioned here the sticker chart and the jar of beans. So I would put a sticker chart on the wall and I'd give him little stars, whenever he had good behaviors. And that sticker chart, he would have so many meltdowns because his overwhelming emotions that he was dealing with. He would just rip up the sticker chart, just rip it up. So we'd have to start over. And then I'm like, well, that's not working. How am I supposed to punish him for ripping up the sticker chart? Like, how does that work? And then I tried a jar of beans where I'd put in little beans every time he had, I was trying to be positive, trying to be less punitive and more positive, right? Give him rewards for good behaviors. And one day he took the jar of beans and he just tossed all the beans out on the backyard in the grass. So that didn't work very well either. So the turning point for me in my parenting journey was the balcony scene, I call it, because it had gotten so explosive and so aggressive with my son that I ended up having to call police and emergency services to hospitalize him multiple times because of his severe aggression towards me and also self-harming. So it was really, really, really rough. By the way, I have permission to share all of this with you here. It's kind of my co-pilot here at Heartstrong. He has come on to do some trainings with me. I'm hoping he'll do more of that. He's also an incredible artist, and he's very well aware that I'm sharing these stories, and he wants me to because he knows how important it is for you and your kids. So the turning point was I was standing on the balcony in my house on the second floor. We had this little kind of railing, and I'm looking down, and I had all of these people in my house. I had police, I had fire department, EMT people. I had my son's friends and our neighbors. We had his godparents. We had all these people in the house trying to help me with this massive explosive meltdown. And this went on, it was like a 12-hour meltdown. It was the most explosive episode we'd ever had. And I realized in that moment, I can't have all these people telling me how to parent my child. I just need to connect with my child, and we just need to solve this together. So I told everybody, go away. Everybody go. I just sent them out. I said, just leave. I'm going to handle this. And in that moment, I made a decision. I am no longer going to be in this crisis. We are going to find a way to solve this problem. So, parents, how it is. When you have a child who's struggling, you are going to, a worried mother does better research than the FBI. So I did a lot of research. I looked at a lot of different programs, a lot of different trust-based and trauma-informed programs and things. And I found some good information out there, but I ended up working really hard to implement that and finding that it wasn't working. So I created Heartstrong out of that process. That's a really long story, but I want to go backwards even further in time to when I was a teacher in 1989. So you can count backwards and figure out how old I am. That's when I started teaching. I was a new teacher and I had classroom behavior challenges. So I remember as a student teacher, I was having a really hard time controlling my classroom. They were getting up out of their seats. They were talking. They weren't paying attention to me. I didn't know what to do to get them to pay attention. So my observation day, I had one of my mentor professor people that had to come and watch me do my student teaching. She came in and she said, well, Sandy, you just have to show them that you're boss. So when you walk in the door, you need to walk in as though you're the Queen of England. Walk in the door, and then if they're not listening to you, go over to the door and just slam the door as hard as you can and make a really loud noise. I thought, oh, that's interesting. Okay. So that's what I did. It didn't fit my personality because I'm a really kind, caring person, but that's what my supervising teacher told me to do. She said, slam the door and show them who's boss. And so that's what I did for the first year or two of teaching. I would just do that really kind of mean Queen of England, I'm the boss, listen to me, slamming the door, scaring them into paying attention. It didn't feel right, but that's what I was told to do. And so I didn't know any better, right? And then I taught in Mexico for 3 years. in my first full-time position as a teacher. I was teaching 6th grade language arts. In the chalkboard incident, it was a situation where I was trained to use this positive discipline program, and we had to write all the rules and have them posted on our wall. And if a child broke a rule, we would write their name on the board. And then if they broke another rule or broke the same rule, then we put a check by their name. If they broke a rule again, we put another check by their name. So there was this thing of like listing the names of all the kids who had been breaking rules and then putting checks by their names. Very, very punitive. But that's what I was taught to do. So I did it. That's what everybody else in the school had to do. So one day I was having a really hard time. It was kind of like a throwback to the Queen of England slamming the door day. I was just getting angrier and angrier and more upset. And I don't lose my cool very often, but that day I lost it. So I'm writing kids' names on the board, and this kid's name and this kid's name. And I'm just writing name after name after name. And I got so angry that I wasn't really paying attention. I turned around in anger. The edge of my pant leg, I was wearing pants, and the pocket of my pants got caught on the chalk tray. We used chalk trays back then. It was actual chalk, not whiteboards and smartboards. And my pants got caught on the chalk tray. I turned around, and then my pants ripped from the pocket all the way down to my knee. I had this, and then there was a flap of like my whole leg was exposed. And I stood there, and the kids were like frozen in fear, staring at me like, what's she going to do now? And I stared at them. We all looked at each other for like this long, pregnant pause. And then we all just started bursting into laughter because it was ridiculously funny that I lost my cool and flipped my lid so much that I ripped my own pants in front of my classroom. So after we laughed for a really long time, I sat down. I'm like, what am I going to do? So I grabbed my stapler and just stapled my pant leg shut and said, okay, I'm never going to do that again. So the moral of both of those stories is that it works to be the Queen of England, to slam the door, to yell at kids, to write their name on the board, and to do the same thing as a parent, marbles in the jar, sticker charts, all of those punitive sort of give them a carrot if they do what they're supposed to do and beat them with a stick if they don't do what they're supposed to do. That rewards and consequences paradigm, it's very behaviorist. It's all about the way we train golden retrievers, right? It's Skinner's rats and Pavlov's dogs. Those of you who are educators, or if you've studied psychology at all, you know, it's all about that behaviorist, give them a reward, give them a cookie, electric shock if they don't do what they're supposed to do. It's all back to that. Children are like animals and we have to train them that way. And the goal is to keep their butts in their seats, right? And have the bell-to-bell instruction in classrooms. And at home, the goal is, do what I told you. Don't question my authority as your parent, right? And a lot of current parenting and teaching experts out there will call these evidence-based systems because they work. Okay, they've done a study, and these things work to get children to stay in their seats, to do their work from bell to bell, to follow what the parent tells them to do. And they get quiet and they get submissive and they obey. Yes, they work, but do they really work to make the kind of lasting change that we want them to make? I don't think so. So I have changed my mind over the years, working with kids, understanding that this was really not a good way to build relationships with children, just to constantly make it sort of this us and them, my way or the highway kind of thing. Over the years, doing lots and lots of research, working with my son, getting to the point where he is now flourishing as an artist. He has his own Etsy store. We have a fantastic connected relationship. We don't have to go to the hospital anymore for his behaviors. All of that has come way, he's improved so much. Same thing in my classroom. Over the years, I realized this isn't working. This doesn't feel right. And I don't think it's helping the kids with the trauma, which at the time I didn't know that was the word for it. At the time I knew, like, my kids who are a little bit rebellious, or they just wouldn't do what I told them to do. Those kids I spent lots of extra time developing a relationship with, because those relationships were that building that trust, right? So I changed my mind. And some of you may have seen this. I created this little infographic, and I sent it out a couple weeks ago. I think about 100,000 people have seen it. So that's exciting, but we need to do more. Like, we need to get this information to everybody so they will change their minds too. And we're going to talk about how to do that. But the idea is trying to control a child by using rewards and consequences does work. It does work in the short term. Just like plucking off the heads of dandelions works to make your lawn green and clean. You could go out and pluck up all those dandelions and it will look lovely. But guess what? Those of you who have yards know that once you pluck off those dandelions, they're going to come back. A few days later, those little dandelions are going to keep popping back because what you've done is you've gotten rid of what's on the surface, but you haven't gone down deeper to the cause of what's above the surface. It's the same thing with the child's behavior. If you dig down deep to find out what's causing the behavior, you're going to find out what is this behavior communicating to us. What is it that the child really needs, or what is the skill that they're lacking that we can help them with? And then when we help the child or we teach them the skill or do whatever it is that needs to be taken care of, those behaviors are going to go away because the root is no longer there. So if we take care of the root, so here are the 5 behavior roots. And underneath each one of these, I mean, I'm sure there are lots of different categories within each, but these are the 5 kind of general categories that I've identified using the work of Ross Green, Mona Delahook, and many other people who are experts out there looking at what they have researched and then just conceptualizing it in a way that I have found that helps parents and teachers to understand. So when we dig down deep to find the reason and then respond with compassion and try to make things better, it makes it better not only for the child, but also for the adult, for the caregiver. So the 5 behavior roots are an unmet need, a lagging skill, an unsolved problem, a limiting belief, or a systemic barrier. And what do we do to solve those? If it's an unmet need, we meet the need. So if a child's hungry, angry, lonely, tired, we give them some food. We help them calm down. We do what we need to do to help meet the need instead of trying to punish the behavior out of them. You can't punish anxiety away. There's nothing you can do to punish anxiety away from a child, right? A lagging skill. So if a child is lagging in an executive function skill or a communication skill or a social emotional skill, we teach the skill, right? We give them ideas on how to do that better. We focus on their progress, not perfection. If it's an unsolved problem, we solve the problem. And we want to get the child's input on how to solve that problem. It's not always just the adult's decision is the way it needs to be. We collaborate with them to get those problems solved. Limiting beliefs are when children don't think that they're capable. For whatever reason, they may have received that message from somebody when they were younger. They may be getting that message from society for whatever reason. They may just feel that way because they are very sensitive to criticism. But we want to focus on hope and strengths and creative possibilities to help those children see themselves as being capable. And then the last one is a systemic barrier. A lot of our kids just have a lot of barriers because of the way society and the way our institutions are set up. There are some very oppressive systems. So we need to eliminate barriers, racism, ableism, all of those barriers that are already out there that are making it that much more difficult for our kids to feel successful. So those are the 5 behavior roots. So the idea, again, is to find out what the root is, deal with the root, and then the behaviors will go away instead of just trying to punish and reward the behavior. And we go into this in depth in my Heartstrong Academy. We talk about specific ways to identify what's going on, and then really specific ways of how to address those issues, whether you're a parent or a teacher. So in 2021, so here I am, let's back to the future, back to now. We have Heartstrong International, and we don't use carrots and sticks in the system that I teach and that I promote and that others are promoting out there. We don't use carrots and sticks because children are not rats or dogs, right? They are human beings, and we want to teach them in the way that human beings need to be taught, in a heart-to-heart way, rather than just this kind of cognitive behaviorist kind of approach. So it's a trauma-informed approach that uses compassion, connection, collaboration, and courage. And the Heartstrong model, Heartstrong is an acronym that stands for honesty, empathy, acceptance, respect, and trust. That's the relationship. And then strengths-based training for resilience and optimistic narratives of growth. And that's the resilience and the skill building and that growth that we see over time and what I call the spiraling stages of growth, which again, we go very much in depth into how that works in the programs that I teach. So by using this kind of approach with my son, this was extremely successful for him. And then I have taught this approach to parents and teachers, and they are also seeing a tremendous amount of growth and healing in the children that they work with. It just works in the way that we want it to work. It doesn't just work like popping off the dandelion heads. It works to make the child feel like they're actually capable, and somebody really cares about them, and somebody really is cheering them on, and they feel successful, and they feel safe, and they feel like they can try instead of just giving up or acting out in a behavior. And that's what we want. We want long-term success, not just short-term, behavior while they're in my classroom. Now, things have changed again. In the last year, we've had a global pandemic, and we've seen an enormous increase in the amount of trauma, ACEs, and anxiety that not only our children are dealing with, but also their parents and their teachers, right? The entire community has faced an adverse experience. This has been an adverse experience. Now, the degree of adversity certainly is varied from individual to individual, and from family to family, and from school to school, depending on where you are geographically, the resources that you have access to. All of those things have had an impact on whether or not it's become a trauma for someone, right? And those protective factors are certainly coming into play as well. Children who have caring adults, children who have caring relationships, who have schools and families that really are supporting them through this, are doing better than the kids who are just kind of trying to figure it out and don't have that same kind of support. And so because of that, everything has changed, right? And that can be a negative thing, but it can also be a positive thing, right? Because when we look back, this changed everything. Like everything that we used to do, we don't do anymore, because we've had to change, we've had to adapt, we've had to learn new ways of handling things. And I think because of this rapid sort of overnight shift to online learning, to letting go of the state testing systems, all those things that we used to say, well, we have to do it because it's always been done. Like we couldn't do that. We had to change. Even telemedicine has become very common now. Whereas it used to be, they would say, well, because of the Medicaid rules and the HIPAA, FERPA rules, we can't do telemedicine over the internet because of confidentiality, blah, blah, blah. There was always some kind of bureaucratic reason or barrier that made it difficult. This last year, everybody said, let's get rid of the barriers. Let's just try something new. So we want to jump on that energy. That's the purpose of this training tonight. I really want you to think about, how can I jump on this energy of change? There's a shift that's happened. In some ways, it's a trauma that we're overcoming. But because people are open and flexible right now to whatever's going to work, this is your chance to jump in and really see how you can make an impact and how you can make a difference and try to change the system, change the way we're doing things to make things better for children and for their caregivers, their parents and their teachers. So a lot of schools are doing this. This is really exciting. It's a scary time because of the trauma that kids are dealing with, but it's also an exciting time because a lot of schools are looking at social emotional learning programs. But that's not enough. I really think that it needs to be a total culture shift in our schools and in our homes. We can't just teach social emotional learning as a separate topic. It needs to be infused in everything that we do. And it needs to be infused with the idea of equity and inclusion and understanding and mental health, wholeness and wellness. That all needs to be infused in the way we run our schools and the way we run our families. We're losing kids. And I mean that in the metaphorical sense, but I also mean that in the literal sense. Kids are dropping out. Kids are disengaged. This was happening before the pandemic, but even more so since the pandemic. We're seeing that really huge gap between the kids who have resources and the kids who don't have resources. And we got to do something to help those kids. We're also seeing a tremendous rise in mental health, hospitalizations, suicidality, all of the things that are a result of trauma. The old ways don't work. we're learning new ways, we're applying new ideas. Some people are really persistent with that old carrot and stick method, right? Let's go back to our carrots and sticks here. It's hard for people to get rid of this because they feel like it really works, right? It's the easiest way to keep children behaving, is to reward them when they're good and punish them when they're bad. But we know that this is just going to cause even more trauma and difficulty for kids who are at their window of tolerance. Like they just have a sliver of a bit of patience with any of that anymore. And I think this goes for teachers and parents too. They have very little patience for being treated that way as well. So we gotta look at the entire community and make things better for everyone. So that means that we can't just let this slide. We can't just say, oh, well, let's go back to the old way. We can't. We've got to make a change, and we need everybody. We need you. We need you to make a commitment tonight that you're going to do something to make things better wherever you are in the world. Whatever little corner of influence that you have, it might just be with your own family, and that's huge. I think that's where everything starts. It starts with what's going on at home, because then children are getting that modeling and getting that love and connection at home, and that gives them resources to deal with things that maybe aren't going as well at school. If you are in a school and you're working with children there, you have a tremendous influence on every child that you work with. You have no idea what kind of an influence you may have on the future. You're building up future leaders, right? And so you're modeling for them and you're training them to be the leaders of tomorrow. And if you're here and you're an administrator, or you have some other leadership role, or you aspire to a leadership role, we really need you to step into that with bravery and courage and say, you know what? I'm going to be positive and friendly, but I'm also going to be firm about what I believe, and I'm going to stand up for what I believe. Okay? And we need others. We need you, and we need you to bring others along. So tonight, I'm going to give you 5 powerful steps that you can use right now to persuade both parents and teachers to stop giving rewards and consequences and start using a trauma-informed, brain-based, compassion-based approach instead. Okay? So let's start with step 1. Step 1 is you need to relate. So what do I mean by relate? So parents and teachers, I have noticed as a parent and as a teacher, it's a lot easier for me to listen to someone who has something to say if they are also a parent or they're also a teacher. Okay? You've been in trainings, I know you have, if you're a teacher, where you had somebody come in from the outside who had never been in a classroom, some PhD or psychiatrist or somebody, maybe just an expert who wrote a book or whatever. They come in and they do a training and you're like, yeah, that's all very nice, but you've never been in my classroom. You don't know what it's like, right? And those of you who are parents, I find this is very common with the parents that I do parent coaching with. They will go to see a family counselor or somebody who's, they may even be a trauma-informed counselor for their child, and the counselor is giving them all of these ideas and things to do at home that are supposed to make things better. And they go home and they try them and they're not working, and they come back and the counselor's like, well, you just need to be more consistent, or you're letting them do whatever they want to do. You're being too permissive. But if those of you who know, and you have children who have trauma and, who are really challenged by severe anxiety or any other mental illness that's related to trauma, that's not going to work. Just being more consistent. So we need people who can relate to the people who are in these situations. So those of you who are here, and I specifically invited parents and teachers because I think we need more parents and teachers that have this specialized knowledge that can go out and relate with your own stories and your own experience of what it's actually like to be in the trenches of a classroom with children with trauma, to be in a family with children with trauma. We need more of you to go out and spread this message, because people are going to listen to you if you have a story to tell. And this very famous quote, people don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. You want to relate to people and say, I know what it's like. I feel your pain. I understand how hard this is. You don't want to start off with that sort of like, sort of naggy, wagging your finger in their face. You're doing this all wrong and these are all the wrong ways. I told you my story. I used to use those punitive methods because that's all I knew. And they work. They do work in the short term. So people are, when they tell you that, if they're afraid that using trauma-informed, compassionate communication, all of that is not going to work, they have good reasons for believing that. So just relate to people's pain and relate to them by sharing your personal story. So that's step one. Okay, start with compassion. Everything in Heartstrong International starts with heart-to-heart communication and having deep, deep compassion for where people are in their journey right now. Step two is educate. Some of you are already educators, but even parents can be educators. You're educating your children, but you can educate other parents and you can educate other teachers. And you need to educate by explaining to them, this is not just like an idea that came to you one day. This is actually evidence-based, brain-based, research-based information. When I train other parent coaches and trainers in the Heartstrong certification programs, I train them by having them read a lot of material that's evidence-based and research-based. We do tons of reading and research so that they can be really knowledgeable about neuroscience and how the body and the brain are affected by trauma, so that when they're trying new approaches, everything is based on science and good practice, best practices that are current, not best practices from 50 years ago, best practices right now for the kids we're teaching right now and the brains and bodies that we're teaching right now. I love this quote by Maya Angelou: "We do the best we can until we know better, and then when we know better, we do better." I love to use this when I'm talking to parents who feel a lot of guilt, or teachers who feel a lot of guilt about, oh, if I'd only known about trauma-informed parenting and teaching back when this happened 3 years ago, this all wouldn't have happened, right? That doesn't help us move forward. We can encourage people by telling them, you know what? I'm going to teach you some new ideas. I'm going to give you some new strategies, and we're going to start fresh. Don't dwell on the past. Just keep progressing, and don't worry if you're not perfect. Things get better and better. So step one is relate, step two is educate, and step three is illustrate. Illustrate is about giving people concrete, visual, real life examples that they can use and practical strategies that they can use. In all the trainings that I do, we don't just talk about the theory, like that's really important, but we always use concrete examples. We do lots and lots of role playing and discussion about actual real life examples of how to implement these strategies in a family that's having challenges. In a classroom where a teacher has 30 kids and out of the 30, 28 of them have severe trauma, right? So we need to illustrate and we need to give people those tools that they can actually use and they can actually see how it's going to work. Because if they don't see how it's going to work and it just sounds like a bunch of here we go to another training, this isn't going to work in my daily life, then they're not going to listen to what you have to say. Right? So to review, we've got relate is step one, educate is step two, illustrate is step three. Step four is communicate. Communication. I do a lot of trainings on communication. And I love this little Far Side cartoon. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember The Far Side with Gary Larson, but you got to speak in a language that people understand. This little duck, he's trying to speak all the different languages, and the duck only understands it when he quacks. So we got to quack in the way a duck can quack back, right? We got to be able to reach people in language and in concepts that they can really get and understand. So when you're talking to parents, talk to parents about what parents are worried about and concerned about. When you're talking to teachers, talk to teachers about what they're worried and concerned about, right? And the best people to do that are other parents and teachers. So that's why all of my programs, I'm training parents and teachers in some of my programs to, just to support their children. But then I also train parent coaches and teacher educators so that they can support other parents and teachers. Because it's that grassroots, coming from the actual situation that you've been in before, where you can really help somebody and really be able to speak their language. So use language that people understand. Talk to them in ways that they're really going to understand, and have lots of conversations with people. Find out what's really hard for them. Find out what their pain points are, find out what their needs are. And when you communicate and you have that open mind and you're willing to listen, people are going to be willing to listen to you as well. And then the last step in our 5-step process of how to persuade somebody to jump on board with trauma-informed, compassionate, brain-based parenting and teaching is to advocate for it. We need people out there talking about this a lot more than we have been, especially now since the pandemic has happened. We are facing a crisis of global proportion, right? We've seen a little bit of it already, but we're going to see more. I just talked to somebody today about how mental health therapists are quitting their jobs. They're leaving because they can't handle the amount of trauma, the secondary trauma and vicarious trauma that they're experiencing from dealing with the trauma of their patients. So those folks are leaving their jobs. Teachers are leaving their jobs because the stress is enormous. So the people that are left are given even more work to do, and their stress is enormous. And so we have a tremendous amount of stress, which, as you know, when you don't have resources that you need to mitigate that, you don't have those protective factors around you, that is going to become a trauma for many of our teachers and parents, as well as our children. So we have to jump out there and say, you know what, there's a better way to do this, and I'm going to advocate for this. So join those committees, talk to your administrators, talk to other parents. If you're a parent and you're in parent groups, talk to them and say, I don't really like the way they do the rules at our school. Let's talk to them about doing trauma-informed education. Maybe they don't know about it. Sometimes people just don't know. So go out there and be bold, be brave, bolder and wiser. Go out there and tell people and advocate for what you want to see to make a change. Okay. So just to review, these are our 5 steps, and I want you to think about these steps. Okay. These 5 power persuasion steps. You want to use all 5 of them, usually starting with that relate, because that's that compassion-driven communication. But I want you to think through these steps and think about what could you do this week. Which one of these steps would it be not too hard for you to actually go out and do one or maybe even 2 of them? But which one would you like to try this week in whatever context that you're in? So whether that's as a parent, are you in a parent group? Do you talk to other parents? Maybe you're in a Facebook group. Maybe you're in an in-person group when you're social distancing. Maybe you're in a community organization of some kind, or a church, or a school, parent group at school. Wherever you gather with other parents, how can you relate to them, educate them, illustrate what's going on, communicate with them, or advocate for more trauma-informed, brain-based, compassionate practices? Think about that for a minute. And then those of you who are teachers, what's going on in your school right now? Are you doing some post-pandemic planning, or where are you in that whole hybrid versus online versus in-person learning? All of that has been very stressful, all the changes involved in that. So where can you jump in and relate, educate, illustrate, communicate, and advocate for trauma-informed, compassionate, brain-based, scientifically evidence-based practices that really support children's growth and healing in your school? So I would love to just pause for a minute. I would love for you to choose one of these, and in the chat, I want you to decide which one are you going to do and what are you going to do that step. So for example, if it's educate, are you able to share a resource with somebody? Is there an article that you could share with people at your school? For communicate, is there somebody that you can have a conversation with this week to try to have an influence on how we are parenting and teaching children? If it's relate, is there somebody that you can go out and really kind of empathize with what they're dealing with and make that connection so that later you can educate, illustrate, or whatever that is? So I'm going to leave this up just for a minute. I want you to choose one. You could do all 5, right? I'm sure we all can think of ways that we do all 5, but just pick one. Just pick one little baby step that you plan to do this week to either relate, educate, illustrate, communicate, or advocate for our children. And I'm going to look at your chat. So everybody write in the chat. Let's see what we got here. Pick one. So do you want me to put it back up again? Let me put it back up so you can look at them. So they are relate, educate, illustrate, communicate, or advocate. Usually I do acronyms. This isn't really an acronym, they just all rhyme. So that worked out nicely. Which one are you going to do? Pick one and type in the chat what you're going to commit. I'm committing to do this week to support persuading other people that this is the way to go. We got to get rid of those carrots and sticks. What are we going to do to stomp out the carrots and sticks? So, there's some chat coming in. Great. So Brittany, you're going to educate and illustrate. Great. Linda's going to relate. She's teaching Sunday school. Awesome. Chloe's going to relate, educate, creating resources for the staff. Excellent, Robin. Russ plans to advocate. Shanice is going to relate. So Russ and Shanice and Chloe, what are you going to do? Like, what is your plan? Do you have somebody in mind? And you don't have to name the person because they might be on this webinar. You might not want to name them if it's your principal or something. But like, what is your actual plan for what you're going to do to relate or to educate? So are you going to send out a resource? Are you going to, I know some of you are really good at doing workshops like this one. So you might want to go do a workshop for a parent group or for a teacher group. Relate to our parents. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Talking to other parents and telling them, this other system works much better in helping our kids. Advocate for my parents, for my parent ed group. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Yeah, because the adults need just as much advocacy as the children do right now. Everybody is so stressed out. Relate to the teachers. Yeah, just go out and just be compassionate and kind. What happened to kindness? Like, I feel like we need to we need a whole lot more people like Mr. Rogers, I guess, like that kind of education where it's just gentle and compassionate and kind. It's missing. We're missing that in our society right now. There's a whole lot of screaming going on social media, people just screaming at each other. It's not helpful. Like, we need to get out there and model what compassionate communication looks like, right? And good and real advocacy. Excellent. I love this. Well, keep putting those things in the chat, and I'll check back here in a little bit to see if we have some more, but keep thinking about that. Relate, educate, illustrate, communicate, advocate. And I want you to do this all the time, but I really want you to spend the rest of this school year really emphasizing this, because people are making plans for the fall right now. Like, what are we going to do next year? How are we going to do this? When we go back to school full time, what's this going to look like? And if we don't take advantage of this moment, we're losing this opportunity. So really think about how you personally can make this an opportunity for change. Okay. And then this is the bonus. The bonus step after step 5 is infiltrate. So you infiltrate peacefully to dominate the system and overtake the system, right? So if enough of us are out there talking about this, we're going to end up changing the way we do parenting, changing the way we do education. And that's the goal, really, for me. That's why Heartstrong International truly is an international company. We have parent coaches, we have educational trainers from all over the world, from New Zealand, from Canada, from the US. There's a few from Europe that have contacted me who want to join us. So really, this needs to be a global movement because we have a global disease of trauma, right? And we need to, as a globe, combat that with peaceful and patient and compassionate, but strong and resilient ways of helping our kids become stronger and more resilient. And there are ways to do that. And that's what this program is all about. So I hope that you will continue to do this and infiltrate and dominate the system. All right, so we started out talking about a little less conversation, a little more action. I want you to go out and take action this week in whatever context that you are in. And remember that when you focus on problems and just sit around, oh, isn't it sad? Isn't it so sad that things are so bad, right? We're just going to get more problems. But when you focus on the possibility, when you really think about how can we make this better? Let's do it. Let's jump in there and do it. Let's not sit around and complain and talk about it anymore. Let's go out and make that difference. Okay. So I also want to invite you, if this resonates with you at all, I have some opportunities for you to jump into our Heartstrong Village of change makers and those who are open to change as well. We have a couple of Facebook groups that you're welcome to join. We have one for parents. It's called Heartstrong Parenting. Some of you are already part of that. We also have another Facebook group called Heartstrong Teaching. I would love for all of you to join us in those two groups, first of all. I also would love to invite you to join our Heartstrong Academy or our Heartstrong Certified Educational Trainer or Certified Parent Coach program. Some of you are very new to trauma-informed practices, or you may know about them, but you don't know how to implement them. If that's who you are, if you're one of those people who's open to changing your methods and you want to get more practical, hands-on illustrations and support for how to do that in the classroom or in a family, then you can join our Heartstrong Academy. Our next cohort, we do this 3 times a year. Our next cohort is in June, and we are going to be enrolling people all throughout the month of April to join that program. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know. You can just send me an email and I'll send you more information. As well as those of you who are interested in becoming parent coaches or educational trainers to go out and actually do this kind of training that I'm doing for you tonight, whether that's part of your current role that you have right now, or if you would like to start a business as a parent coach or as an educational trainer. A lot of you are doing sort of working from home right now anyway. So this could be a supplemental income for you. Or like me, you may decide that you want to go full-time as a trainer and do this as your full-time job. So that might be another option for those of you who really love to do training. I'm going to be sending you more information about both of these programs. You'll be getting some emails from me. And so if you are interested in either one of them, I do information sessions. I've been doing them mostly on Thursday nights. So you can sign up for one of those information sessions if you have questions, and then just join us and I'll go over all the program details so that you can learn more about it and see if it's a good fit for you. Okay. So I'm also going to be announcing, I haven't announced this yet, but I'm going to be doing a project that you're all invited to. It's going to be called the Post-Pandemic Peace Project, Parents and Educators Activating Compassion and Empowerment. So watch your email for more information about that. If you want to become a change agent and you really want to activate this kind of making a peaceful world, a peaceful family, a peaceful school, where we have peace in our hearts and peace between one another in our relationships. We are a Heartstrong Village. We are parents and teachers together working to make a difference for children with trauma, ACEs, and anxiety. If you would like to join our certification program, the early bird registration for that is April 10th. So it's coming up pretty quickly. So I'd encourage you to sign up for the next information session, which will be this coming Thursday, a week from today. Just join us for that. If you're watching this as a replay, it might be beyond April 10th. Don't worry, because we may have some scholarship money available for those of you after April 10th, but priority scholarships, if you're in need of a partial scholarship, priority will go to our early bird registration. But if we have additional money for that, we will offer that to our other people too. So don't despair. Don't say, oh, it's too late. Registration will be open until we start the program. So it's like about 2 weeks before we start in June. So I think it's May 15th is the final registration date. Okay. So thank you so much for coming to the workshop. I really appreciate you being here. You are all amazing for taking your time out because you care for kids and you care about their caregivers. Join us at the Heartstrong Academy and the Heartstrong Professional Certification Programs. If you have questions about either of those, that's my email, support@wingbuilder.com. All right. Thank you so very much. I hope this has been informational and helpful to you, and have a great week.